Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our 8th Science Cafe and the last one of this SIRENE project. Thank you very much for being here. As you know, we will have like an agenda similar to the other ones we have had in the other times. So we will have the context of the project that Miriam will introduce. Then we will have our speaker, that is PhD Antonio Maturo. He will explain and talk about the different strategies to create social capital for innovation. And then we will have, if we have time, some questions. So we always say the same in these sessions. As you know, we define, or we took the definition from Blanca Herrero de Gaña, that was our first speaker in our first Science Cafe, about what social innovation is. There are many definitions. We like this one. That is a new or novel ways that society has to deal with relevant social challenges that are more effective, efficient, and sustainable, or that generate greater impact than the previous ones, and that contribute to making it stronger and more articulated. We want to see how social innovation can be applied to SHAF environment, that is smart, healthy, age-friendly environments. And the definition of SHAF environments we took from the SHAF Stakeholders Network. And it says that to live and participate in society, it is necessary that working and living environments are functional, usable, accessible, affordable, protective, and reachable. And we have also to take into account that with the ongoing digitalization of society, new opportunities arise. And digital solutions can really be good and can assist citizens to live and promote a healthier life, and to be independent, to participate, to have the opportunity to work in later life, and ensure better living conditions, increasing well-being. But we have also to have clear that digital is just a tool. We need the whole ecosystem to work together, and that is what the SIRENE project intends to do. So as I have said before, this is the 8th Science Cafe. We started with the two first ones were more from the general approach, what is social innovation and how social innovation is applied to self-environments. Then the next 4 ones were more like how the different challenges the stakeholders find can be addressed. So we have different science cafes from the academia, from the citizens, from older citizens, from the business field, and from a lot of from the economic side also. And then the last 2 ones we have come back to general and to see also how self-environments can be aligned with other approaches. So the 7th one was about how to design for health promoting environments. And this last one is going to be about different strategies to create social capital through innovation. So I will not take more time. Now I will give the floor to my colleague from Science to Europe, Miriam Cabrita, that is in the coordination team of SIRENE project, and she will give a brief overview of the SIRENE project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Hi, hello, everyone. So just giving a very short, brief introduction of the SIRENE project. It's a coordination and support action funded by the European Commission. We are in the last days of the project. So the project will be finished now in October 2024. It's a consortium with 6 partners. Today we have here present Shine to Europe, represented by me, F6S by Diana, and Tecnalia by Olet and Sylvia. And what we want to do with this project is to promote social innovation reaching communities, enabling inclusive, green, and smart housing and environments, as introduced already by Sylvia. And how do we do this? What are the outcomes now? We are at the end, we can talk about the outcomes, outputs of the project. We have, starting from the left, SIRENE repository. This is a repository, a database of several projects, initiatives about initiatives in the topic of SHAFE. Then we have the SIRENE Digital and Expert Hub, where the point of this project as a coordination support action was to bring together experts in this area to co-create then the element in yellow, our social innovation framework that is composed by 5 elements: a blueprint of good practices, a capacity building framework, sustainability strategy, and some toolkit for networking, and a manual on social innovation. And all this material is, the project has 3 main objectives: to inform, and this this event, the Science Café, is a part of the is one of the initiatives that we did to inform everyone who wants to learn about social innovation in Café. So we had Science Cafés, video pills, info packages. The second is to build capacity, and for that we had several training webinars and training schools. And then, as I mentioned, to connect, to bring people together, because as we know, we cannot do any of these by ourselves. And just to let you know, it's my last slide also, the SIRENE Toolkit will be launched soon. We are really in the final steps. So everything, all these components, all the videos, all the recordings of the events that we did are already available online, but it will be organized in this SIRENE Toolkit, where based on your stakeholder group, let's say if you identify as a citizen, policymaker, you have a list of the material that is relevant for you. And this is all accessible via the SIRENE project website. And that's it about the project. So without taking much more time, because the important presentation today is from our speaker, from Professor Antonio Maturo, professor at the University of Bologna on sociology of health, that will talk to us about strategies to create social capital through innovation. And as Sylvia also mentioned, this is really I think it's, I dare to say, a piece of the puzzle that we were missing, but we didn't know we were missing before before discussing it with you. So I'm really looking forward to it, Antonio, and I will stop sharing my screen so you can share yours.
Okay, I will try to do it. Yeah, can you? Okay, do you think, I think you can see my slides, right? So thank you for the invitation.
Antonio, sorry, can you just put in full screen?
Yeah.
Yes, perfect.
Thank you for the invitation. You gave a very gentle presentation of me. Now I hope I will not, you rose the expectations, so I'm a bit scared, but I will try to do my best. You already introduced me, so I think I will go directly to the point, and it will take between 15 and 20 minutes. I will do something very, very short, and hopefully I would like to give some ideas that maybe can be introduced in the final report and the repository. Anyway, so my presentation is divided in three parts. I will talk about loneliness with a special focus on the effects on health and also on the loneliness of elderly people. And then I will introduce this concept, which is usually used in molecular biology, scaffolding, and see if it works in also in social sciences. And then I will try to give on this basis some examples of social innovations. It was last year that the Surgeon General in the US gave this interviews, which that was very popular. He, on the New York Times, he said, loneliness kills more than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And this sentence became very popular. The interview was spread and picked up in all over the world, and this idea came out from a report he had organized in his department, but of course in epidemiologists and doctors, social sciences, it's not a news actually that loneliness is very, very dangerous for health. As a matter of fact, loneliness affects several pathologies like heart disease and stroke. It is connected with the development of diabetes, of course, depression and anxiety, addiction, suicidality and self-harm, dementia, and also, of course, other pathology. Earlier death is the result of all of them, and but also cancer, for instance. If we think about colon cancer, which is related to alcohol consumption and what we eat, being alone has been proven that can worsen the food habit and alcohol consumption and so on. So loneliness is a risk, a very, very strong risk factor for health. Another bad news is that loneliness is increasing, and in our society, there are therefore people who work on it. Loneliness and isolation are slightly different. Loneliness is also related to perception, while isolation maybe is a more objective concept. Stakeholders have taken some measures. There are institutions, they have taken some steps. And for instance, in Great Britain and in Japan, there are ministers of loneliness have been appointed, and they deal exactly with these social problems. And this is interesting also because given that institutions should have cleared this problem, this could be good for our for research, because it is good to know that there is attention on this point. Eurostat have also stressed the importance of loneliness, especially concern for the growing number of older people living alone. This is particularly worrying, and particularly, as we will see, older women living alone. I took some other data. In 2018, the share of older women aged 65 years or more in the EU 27 living alone was 40%, while the share for older men was 22%. We know that mainly this is because of the longer life expectancy of women compared to men. I took an example from Italy also. In the period from 2017 to 2021, the number of people aged 65 and over and living alone has increased overall from 47 to 50%, more so for men than women, even though the latter, women, live without family members more frequently than usually. It can happen that this is another point which is important for this distinction. Also because we need to pinpoint, to be more analytical when we talk about elderly, because of course it is something to be 65, it is different being 90 years old. And here we see how the percentage of female is much higher than the percentage of males living in the length of time, in the coming of time. So there is also women, a higher percentage of women which increase by age, given that women are more likely to become widows. Of course, this table can make some confusion because the number are changing because people are dying. So the absolute numbers are decreasing from time to time. Again, it is interesting, according to me, to see that older persons in Eastern and Southern Europe are more likely to report frequent loneliness and fewer social contacts than in the northern and western parts of Europe, which is also against a trivial stereotype that people in the south are very warm, they have more contacts, but also but even more, it is interesting because people in the north are more elderly in the north are more likely to live alone comparing to the south. So in Sweden, 40%, more than 40% of the elderly live alone. In Portugal, and it is on 27%, in Greece 23%. So it is interesting to see that even if there are fewer old people living alone in Southern Europe, they report frequent loneliness. But this is something that should be investigated. Working on the decrease in the birth rate, I came across this data, which is, I mean, if we are dealing with the decrease in birth rates, I don't think we think immediately of the loneliness of the elderly. How does it come that there is a relationship? I mean, you can notice here that women without children born in 1950 are 11%. So in Italy. So of all the women born in Italy in 1950, almost 90% of them had children. So when they turned 80, which will happen in 6 years, I guess, they will likely have someone who can help them. Of course, the partner also. But women without children born in 1980 are 25%, and they probably will not have children after, just a few, I guess, after 44 years. So when they will turn 80 in 2060, 25% of them will not have the support of children. So also the birth rate is related to loneliness. There are different kinds of loneliness. Emotional loneliness, the lack of a partner, social loneliness, lack of social connections, existential loneliness, you feel separated from the social life. And loneliness can be temporary, it comes and goes. Situational, I feel alone during Christmas holiday. Chronic, always perception of loneliness. And there are different ways to define loneliness. Basically, usually we take the one coming from psychology. Loneliness is the state of distress or discomfort that results when one perceives a gap between one's desires for social connection and actual experiences of it. So you see, it is a relational concept. There can be people with a lot of connection that feel lonely because they would like to have more, and people with a few connections that are satisfied. There is also another problem, stigma. Loneliness is highly stigmatized in our society. And then the paradox is that it is easier to make friends if you already have friends. If it is easier for couples to make friends, but if you are alone, it is pretty hard. It is kind of stigma, it is a shame. And so we face here what I really love to quote, the Matthew effects coming from the gospel. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. So it means that it is a kind of, so for the better off, it is the better off, socially better off, a virtual circle. For people who have problems, the problems will be multiplied. How can we create connections? So I guess that all of you have recognized scaffolds in there. in biology. So of course I'm joking, it was a surprise even for me. So just I came across, when I was forced to read a couple of articles in molecular biology and in tissue engineering of this infrastructure, can we call it in this way? What are scaffolds in tissues engineering? Scaffolds are artificial structures that are implanted in our body, capable of supporting the formation of three-dimensional tissues. They are typically made of polymeric biomaterials and provide the structural support for cell attachment and subsequent tissues development. Also defined as a framework for cells to adhere, proliferate, and differentiate. So it is a structure, it is a framework, it is something which help the growth. And they are artificial, but they can also contain natural materials. And they end up in a kind of, they are absorbed then in the material that they produce. So they become part of the organ. And I found this analogy really intriguing, also because when we make proposals in the health realm, in the health sector, there are doctors who make the review. So I think we should we should quote some molecular biology terms. You can cut it, this part, Miriam. Anyway, so I was thinking, how can we translate this concept from medicine to society? How can we think, how can we find an analogy from tissue engineering to sociality development? So, and I was thinking, which social innovations considered as social scaffolding can foster the growth of social relationships and social capital, which are so good for health, social relationships and social capital, because they are the antidote to loneliness. Social capital, a very popular concept, a bit wide. Here I'm talking about linking and bridging social capitals. So the creation of the capacity and opportunities to make connections with friends, also to make connection with different the people who are not like us. So the encounter of different social classes, people from different social status, which is really, really important for health and also for prosperity in a society, for generalized trust, and so on. So I just make five examples here, very, very short. This is my city, my town, Rimini. I live 5 minutes walk from here. It's not exactly like in the picture, but pretty beautiful. So you see there, this street workout parks. There are these machines for doing workout and so on. There are several ones actually in this seaside promenade. And there are people there doing exercise, but most of all, what happened is that people are increasingly gathering there. They become places for social connections. So the function these workout areas were planned is not anymore the main function. People get there to see other people, not for the gym itself, for exercise. And this means creating social connections. Probably this is a very classical example, the creation of walking groups. People in the evening start walking together now, and they get to know each other. They get to make new connections, new friends, and also these walking groups have differentiated subgroups were created. For instance, the meditative walking group, and so on. So people get out at 8:30 in the evening on Wednesday evening, for instance, in the winter, and they just walk together. They talk to each other, and they create connections, which shouldn't have been otherwise. There are Alzheimer cafes, and here again the idea was that the caregivers from the family caregivers could meet and exchange opinions and support themselves, and then also become kind of ambassadors out of these places, because of course dementia is such a terrible illness. I know there are several pathologies which are terrible, but Alzheimer is the worst because it affects all the family. People into this condition need assistance 7 days out of 7, 24 hours. And also it is a pathology in which investments are very poor. While, for instance, cancer has all the industry behind, Alzheimer is a very bad financed problem of health. This is also very probably trivial, parents meeting at primary school, but I did some research for a society which ran 3 primary school and kindergarten, and they told me we put a bench out of our school. In all of our school there is a bench outside, and the parents started sitting there after school, and they got to know each other while the children were playing. So it generated sociality, social relationship, connections, very simply. And last but not least, you mentioned digital health. In Italy, we have in Italy, I guess also out of Italy, but this concept on life is becoming, is really popular. It was coined by a philosopher in Oxford, Floridi. So the idea is that nowadays the distinction between digital relationship and real life is obsolete. We live always in a mixture, in a hybrid situation like this one we are right now. Is it a digital, or is it real? I think it's also pretty real. And for the elderly, this is important because digital connections also facilitate face-to-face encounters. And I'm not talking about Tinder. I am talking about people also when they meet and they talk in a bar. They are disabled if they do not have information taken from the net. We discuss things that we have seen on the internet, of course, and this is the case for us who are really young, but it is true also for old people. Also because elderly are increasingly digital, and this is a point that we should take into consideration. They suffer from the digital gap, but hopefully, I hope that we will also do something digitally when we get old. So just to sum up, which kind of innovation in order to foster the creation of social capital? Of course, this is not the last word for this, but I just would like to mention the idea that initiatives should be community-based, so the involvement of community is fundamental, also because society is so complex that you need fresh information. Engineering serendipity and unexpected outcomes. Often the main purpose is not the most important thing that afterwards happen. So the idea is that you could try to make interventions open to change in some ways. Co-creation, no top-down, is again, I guess, a consequence of the first 2 points, and therefore, for the policymaker, with help of the researcher, the important is to create the context in which the ecosystem of all the components you quoted in your slides, health providers, policymakers, citizens, could work together. So I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonio, for this inspiring talk and for guiding us through the literature. And just, I mean, I think, as you said, it's something that we all know, but sometimes seeing the numbers in front of us is needed, and it's an eye opener. And for especially, I mean, you know, I have an hybrid profile. I come from engineering or biomedical engineering, bringing these concepts from tissue engineering to social concepts is super interesting. I think we have time for 1-2 questions. I don't know if anyone wants to ask something. From Sylvia Olatz, yeah?
Yes, thank you very much. Very inspiring. Also, the difference between loneliness and isolation, that you can be isolated and not to feel lonely because you don't need it. And I wanted to ask about the first data that you were coming, like the 40% of the people in Sweden was living alone, and the 27%, for example, in Portugal. And do you have data about if they feel more lonely in one country or the other? Because I think that the social context is has a lot of weight. Not normally the Mediterranean or southern countries, we are more social. We have a very big family ties, and we tend to need like more, let's say, a social environment. And perhaps in the northern countries, the way of living is different, and they may not have that need. Have you checked? I mean, have you data about these kind of differences among different countries and cultures?
There are scattered. There are data from the EU data sets. I took them from there. What I think about this kind of paradox, that we think that in the south people have more connections, right? While in the north they have fewer. So my idea is that probably it's not the people living alone are also in a better health than people living in a family, and are more inclined to have social connections. So 40% of persons in Sweden live alone, and they have a better health probably than the 83% of people living in the family in Portugal, perhaps, or in Italy also. It's perhaps people living in the family have fewer connections out of the family, because they, I don't know, they can be in a worse condition. It's not. It's just an hypothesis, actually. I don't have a question, an answer on this.
Yeah. Also, because sometimes I mean, there is loneliness, there is desired loneliness. I mean, not everyone that is lonely feels lonely. It's not the same, like being alone, that feeling lonely. So probably there is a difference there also in what you,
Yes.
in what you want.
Yeah, you are right. Probably also in the Nordic countries, the level in which you feel alone is higher than in the south, like in Italy and in Portugal, for instance. We feel we feel alone if we don't talk any 2 hours, probably with someone.
So the expectation, what
Yeah.
you expect, yeah.
And also I understand that the generations, as we are changing also our way of living, because globalization is making us more, let's say, similar than the generations before. Probably when we get older, our numbers will be different. I mean, this is something that can be analyzed thinking on the generations that came before, because the way of living was different. But now that everything is more common, let's say that you can have like the same shops and the same life in the center of Vienna that in the center of Bilbao, probably the next generations will have different numbers and different situations than the ones now. But it's very interesting. I mean, it made me think a lot about loneliness and isolation and what is to be alone or to feel lonely. That is different. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I think also a factor, so you talked about the birth rate, but also picking a bit with what Sylvia said, also the fact that the moving to the urban areas, that you have like this continuous moving, or also globalization in the sense that the children, let's say, are much more likely to go to live in other countries, and then the families stay behind, let's say. So there are so many factors. It should be really analyzed at the generational level, as suggested by Sylvia. I can imagine. I actually have a question, but I don't know if Diana or Olet, you want to ask something? No. So for me, one of the things that I'm always interested is, how do you measure success from the sociological point of view? And I know this is a difficult question, and I see you already, but because coming from engineering, of course, is always about results, and money, or most of the times when you have health interventions. But in this case, first, I can imagine it's a very long term, or it's not something that you see the results immediately. And second, as you said, most of the times the success of these interventions is like, let's say, a secondary effect. So you gave the example of the workout. It was not built, maybe the municipality is measuring the success of this intervention as how many people work out there every day or every week, and not how many people gather there. So do you have could you give us from your perspective, from your side, from the sociological side, how do you measure success of this type of interventions?
So first of all, authorities should measure success. I don't know if they do it actually regularly. And I would these examples are very different from each other. And success, I guess, that should be considered with respect to the aim. For instance, Alzheimer Café, I think they can provide, they can have a spillover effect because you can generate other different social relationships also out of Alzheimer Café. However, my idea would be to make a social research in order to understand what what they think about these initiatives and what they have gained and how they, if these initiatives ended up in more connections. So to put it very short, that they should hire me.
Yeah, and it's very also going back to the SIRENE project, the need to work all together. So to have the social scientists working with the policymakers, working with the people who, in this case, if it's the physical environment, the architects, the urbanists, everything, because by yourself you cannot, and or you reach much less than together. I think it's a very nice ending. If you agree. So just thank you again, Antonio, for your time and for this inspiring talk.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.